Hi all, I have a historically interesting game to show you. This is probably the last game that the Leela ID 11248 will play at TSAC. And Leela made it quite a long game actually, so this was against Fritz. I believe there is going to be another replay game of where there was a network fault, but this was the last official tournament game of Leela, so against Fritz. Let's have a look. E4, C5. So Leela playing white. We have the Sicilian defense, and here's the end of the book, E5. Now we have knight B3, bishop E7, bishop E3, bishop E6, knight D5, knight takes, E takes. So you can see white has a queenside pawn majority, 4 pawns here to the 3 on this side of the board. If we cut the board in half, queen D2, black castles, knight A5, queen C7, white castles, bishop G6, queen C3, offering the exchange of queens. But this would give white, if this happened, this would give white some pressure on the B file. It looks pretty uncomfortable. So we have bishop D8, and Leela takes off the queens and plays B4 here. We have knight D7, rook FC1, rook AB8, F3, rook fc8, c4, bishop takes a5, b takes, rook c7, and it looks as though already there's a kind of fortress in the position. I'm not going to give too much commentary on these positions. I just want to take you to something which I find a little bit special, a little bit magical later on. We have this fortress where it seems as though it's difficult to break through here. Very difficult to break through. So quite a lot of high-level shuffling, and it looks as though this surely is going to be set for a draw. Although Fritz was getting short on time and playing on its increment, its time management hasn't been the greatest throughout the tournament, and actually its tournament placement kind of reflects that. Perhaps it's like lowest placed in Division 1 at the time of this game. So was Fritz going to be able to draw this or not? It seemed very, very likely, and we're all waiting and all discussing actually. Quite a few of us on the Leela live chat, a lot of fun, which network to send for the Premier Division. So I said jokingly, Leela was like dragging out this game to help the network carry on learning. It was just dragging out this game. It seemed like a total fortress. I didn't really see any way for white to break through, but there was actually a critical moment coming up, which someone's asked me to make note of around here. This was the point where it seems as though white could have played bishop takes d6 check. So this here, rook takes, and then a whole piece sack for rook takes b7, which gives classic connected passed pawns. Is this enough for a bishop? Well, it turns out if we follow this continuation, it seems Stockfish 10 ends up giving it a nice advantage for white here. This continuation would have been, it seems, a way for a big advantage. And so there's an outside pass, pawn there, pawn up. This should be winning for white. So anyway, Leela didn't play bishop takes d6 check, so at move 87 plays this, and the game continues quite a bit. So the discussions carried on quite a bit on the Leela live chat, which the Discord, which I think is one of the most pleasant real-time chat rooms I've ever seen. I was a bit hesitant a few months back to use it, but once you start using it, it's a very, very suave setup. So check out the Leela live chat. A lot of fun and discussions at the moment about which network to send. So and this game did start to drag. I just felt myself as though what is actually going on now? Is there any chance to break the bind, the kind of fortress? Because anytime if white wants to exchange off bishops, it weakens d3. So bishop e2 might not be that desirable, and that bishop's not actually doing much there on g4, but it looks like a fortress. Magnus Carlsen said he doesn't believe in fortresses. Is this just a fortress though? Is this just a fortress draw? So interesting. Okay, so we have now bishop takes c5, a change here. Bishop takes c5, critical milestone in this game at move 137. And then so swapping, winning that b7 pawn for a5, and then the game carries on. And it looks as though this is a little bit scary for black. King coming to that nice central square again. And the continuations of which Leela network to send carried on. In fact, a straw poll was made, and it looks as though, yeah, one which is not the cutting edge ID, but one which has been fairly well tested is a good candidate on the current straw poll, of which Leela ID to send. So I don't know how many of you have been following the Leela self-learning graph. It did spike up in the last day. In fact, quite dramatically, it spiked up in the last day. But you can't just go on the graph. You need to like test the ID. So here at move 183, there's c5 break. So this changes the pawn structure, and it looks for a moment as if the king's a bit awkwardly placed here, as if the king's going to get mated. But yeah, we have a bit of interesting stuff happening here. But now bishop c4 check, and black has to give back. Black has to play this. So yeah, after this, so black has to play that, because if king f6, then bishop d5, and this is winning for white. It'll be totally winning the exchange up. So that has to be taken, and then we have this position. So this is now carrying on here, and so the discussions continue on the live chat. Which ID of Leela to send? And I've actually checked out a few videos recently on decisiveness, and tried to take out some of the common themes of how to be more decisive generally about things. I think some of the strongest themes were to sort of, whatever you do, make sure it aligns to your core goals and beliefs, and also to anything you do, even if it seems like a bad decision, if it helps you get to a better version of yourself as a learning experience, then it might be worthwhile. Pardon me, something dramatic here happened. So the pawn is allowed to go to the 7th rank, and many people were convinced if this happened, I mean, even me actually, if this happened, it doesn't look as though white can make any progress at all here. This looks like a total fortress. If I asked you to pause the video for 5 seconds, wouldn't you think this is a draw? Well, it's up to you if you want to do that. Okay, nothing much is going to change for a moment. Rook c5 though, but there's a slight clue here that rook c5 carries with it the idea of rook takes b5 to queen the a pawn just in time. You know, as an example, if the bishop didn't move to d3, so just as an example, then bang, rook takes b5, and all of a sudden this is a fast queener, and that wins. So that has to be avoided. So we have the bishop moving out of the way. But it is a clue, which is interesting, that could contain the seed of the structure, that idea of rook takes b5. But it's not evident here, it seems, to me at least, how that could be used. So we carry on this game, and people thinking, why is this game carrying on? And there's multiple evaluations, if you follow this at TSEC, of other entities, which also did think white has a certain winning probability. It wasn't set at 0, so we're wondering, what is this? Why isn't this just a draw? Have they all got it wrong? They're fallible. So what on earth could happen which really transforms this position into any sort of advantage for white? It looks as though Leela was just messing around. It should just be a draw, right? This should be a total draw. So what could possibly go wrong for black in this position? As long as that rook takes b5 tactic is avoided, surely this is a certain 100% well, ironclad draw, except here g4 at move 280, g4. This is a real shocker. This is putting a pawn to be captured by two opponent pawns. And Why? Is this a way of losing the position? So this is very, very interesting for me, because actually it's a very, very subtle way of creating a fork. If we think of a fork as something unpleasant for the opponent because they have to juggle two issues with one move, that is a very important way of winning games. Yasuo Sowan in his tactics book mentioned that the double attack is one of the key pillars of most tactical combinations, even very advanced ones. The fork is like a fundamental pillar, and he's echoing other writers on tactics. So how does this G4 relate to any kind of fork in this position? Now, if you remember, the rook takes b5 tactic creates sometimes a winning passed pawn. So what is making that into a fork? It's very, very interesting here. Now, on f takes g4, this wasn't played. H takes g4 was played. Let's examine f takes g4, rook b3. This position here, there is a kind of fork even here of potentially playing things like f5. So let's carry on here. King d2. This is just a variation. But we end up where white plays f5 through Zugzwang in this position. Now I'm not sure. Yeah, there was no other move here, right? The bishop can't go here because the rook takes b5. Can't go to d3 because king takes, and the rook's handling e1. So the king is moving away from f5. So a weakness of the last move to play f5. Now once f5 is played, it turns out here this is a little bit more Zugzwangy than before, because we reach a position where here black is losing material. In this critical position, on my analysis, g3 happens. I believe the reason for this is that after king g6, rook takes b5, a6, g3. It's important here to play king takes e2 to be able to answer g2 with king f2, and that's winning for white clearly. If in this position after g3 one plays a7 rather casually, black has a tempo gaining resource after a8 queening, not queen, which allows queen g8 check, but to play e1, and then black is the one that's better here after queening with check. So overall in this line it seems as though this f takes g4 line, just to recap that as a revision, this happens just as a recap, as an example. So basically black's driven in this kind of Zugzwang territory here, rook d5, where g3 is prompted, and that the h pawn and the g pawn drop off, and that's going to be winning for white. So interesting resources in these endgames, very intricate resources, subtle stuff. So in this position g3 has to be played, and then check, rook takes h5 check, and then black is getting scooped up. This is a big advantage for white with that extra pawn now. So in the game actually h takes g4 was played, and it still seems, well, what is this? Is this just a way of losing? Black's got another passed pawn here. You have check, rook c7, rook b5, king going to d2. So the king's cut off, but now look, rook c5, so threatening rook takes b5, the bishop moves, rook e5, bishop c4, and now the point is h5. So undermining the f5 point, believe it or not. And now here, now that f5 is weaker, it isn't supported by a g6 pawn. This makes a crucial difference for actually forking b5 with f5. Here now king f6 was played, rook c5, bishop d3, rook c6 check, rook c3, and now here rook c5, and you see the point. Black's faced with rook takes f5 or rook takes b5, And if bishop d3, there's a check, and then taking on d3. So we've put that on the board. There's a check, and we could just take on d3, knowing that the pawn's not queening. So here, after rook c5, black gives up that pawn, and now it's become clear-cut as a win for white, as if by magic. And I just felt really dumb about this, never seeing this possibility at all whatsoever. I was absolutely convinced it was a stone cold draw, fortress draw. And the chess-based interface gave up at move 300, by the way. The game actually ended in 308 moves, but I can't easily show you that here. So 308 moves, it was the longest game of TSEC Division 1, it seems. Yeah, the longest game. So anyway, if you found that point about the magic fork instructive, I mean, I did. I found it kind of magical. This was a new thing for me. This being able to win this game as a new thing. I just absolutely convinced it was raw. I thought we'd all been wasting our time watching this game endlessly as if something was going to happen, but we kind of were mostly convinced nothing was going to happen. Isn't that amazing? So anyway, if you enjoyed this game video, then please click on the top left box, which should appear shortly, to become a member at chessworld.net, play against other YouTubers. You can also check the YouTube analysis of this game in advance, or all these games in advance with the improved menu you learn from the Master's YouTube order button. Comments, questions, donations, see the description. Like, share, subscribe to the notification bell, really appreciated. And also the new Teespring store in the description. Okay, thanks very much. Addendum, this is the final cross table for the record. So Leela dominated Division 1. So this is quite some way that Leela's come from 2 seasons ago where it was barely winning any game in Division 4. So to conquer Division 1 like this is a phenomenal achievement for Leela. So she'll be heading into the Premier Division now, along with the Komodo engine, which uses also the Monte Carlo tree search, but not the neural network component yet for evaluating positions, but it might do in the future. So congratulations to both for being promoted to the Premier Division. But yeah, there's one game of Leela which actually wasn't a loss. It's to be replayed. So barring that, doesn't change the end result. Leela's dominated Division 1 in spectacular fashion. So congrats to the whole Leela team. And let's see what we can do in the Premier Division. Thanks very much.